The NFL free agency frenzy is officially underway, and teams all across the league are making big moves to reshape their rosters for the 2025 season. From the blockbuster signings to surprising trades, the action certainly heating up, and we now get joined by Lance Medow, national sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer, and our dear friend, to break down all the chaos and what it means for the season ahead. Good morning, and thanks for getting up with us again, Lance.
Absolutely, Ken. Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
You bet. Well, the NFL free agency kicked off this week, and we've already seen some major names switching teams. What's your big picture take on how things are shaping up so far?
Well, to your point, it's been extremely active. This is one of my favorite times of the year because teams can shift their personnel and rosters can transform within the span of days. I think, to me, the biggest takeaway is clearly there's been an emphasis on the trenches, and that's where it should be, Ken. If you're going to redefine your team, it's going to come on the offensive line as well as the defensive line. And I think there are two teams that jump out to me in particular that have followed these trends. Number one, the Chicago Bears. This is a team that needs to revamp its offensive line if it has any hope of duplicating what the Lions offense did last season, now that they brought over the Lions offensive coordinator as their head coach. And they go out, they acquire Jonah Jackson, who was previously with the Lions from the Rams, and they acquired Joe Thuney from the Kansas City Chiefs. So you're talking about you're helping the interior of your offensive line and the exterior to make sure that your young quarterback can thrive. And that, of course, is Caleb Williams. So I thought those were two home run acquisitions by the Bears. And they bring in Grady Jarrett on the defensive front, who the Falcons just let go of, who's an interior defensive lineman that also has a knack for going after the quarterback. So I really love those moves across the board. And then I think the Vikings, coincidentally, also in the NFC North, right up there with what the Bears have done. They also addressed the offensive line. They brought in Will Fries and Ryan Kelly from the Chiefs to help the interior. Vikings had a good season with Sam Darnold last year, but I think the offensive line play was a bit of a roller coaster. So that needed to be addressed. And then they acquired Jonathan Allen from the Commanders on the defensive front, a really good run stopper who could also, once again, get pressure on the quarterback. So those two teams, I think in particular, have stood out in terms of how they've gone about navigating the early stages of free agency.
And Lance, of course, we're a New Jersey-based channel. So what's happening with the Giants, the Jets, and the Eagles?
Well, I had to set the stage for that. I wanted to go out of town first before now we hit on the New Jersey market. With respect to the Giants, I think the Giants have had a nice start to free agency because they've addressed major issues on their roster, Ken. And you're talking about the secondary. That was problematic last season. Number one, they could not take away the football. They were not an opportunistic defense. And teams attacked their young secondary. So they went out and they got Javon Holland from the Miami Dolphins, who's been an extremely active player over the course of his career. He actually had a 99-yard touchdown off an interception in MetLife Stadium 2 years ago on Black Friday when he was going up coincidentally against the New York Jets. So you could argue he's familiar with the dimensions of MetLife Stadium, but I love the fact that he's worked with a variety of different defensive coordinators. This is going to be his fourth defense in the span of 4 seasons. Despite that, his numbers haven't dipped. And they lost Xavier McKinney a year ago when he signed with the Green Bay Packers. So now you're bringing in a safety that could play near the line of scrimmage, can play on the back end, can take the football away. He'll be able to anchor Shane Bowen's defense. And when Shane Bowen, who's the Giants defensive coordinator, was in Tennessee, he relied on a safety by the name of Kevin Byard. That was the heart and soul of his defense. So it's no surprise that now a year into the Giants defense, he's saying, hey, let's duplicate that. Then the Giants also went out and got Paulson Adebo from the New Orleans Saints, veteran cornerback. The common trait, by the way, Ken, between both of these players is they're coming off of rookie contracts. They were both drafted in 2021. So you're getting them young and you're getting them when they're ascending, which I think is very important when it comes to free agency. Adebo, numerous passes defensed over the course of his career. 2 years ago, 18 passes defense. You like to see that. Coming off an injury last season in which he broke his thigh bone, but overall pretty durable during the course of his career, and a guy that's comfortable being aggressive, playing out on an island, which is good because he's going to be exposed to some really top-line wide receivers within the NFC East. So the Giants really helped their cause on the back end and brought in Roy Robertson Harris, a veteran defensive lineman up front who could help complement Dexter Lawrence in stopping the run, and getting after the quarterback, as well as Chauncey Golston, who also is coming off a breakout campaign with the Dallas Cowboys when he had 5.5 sacks. So not huge names, but that's not what wins in free agency. The Jets, of course, their big splash was they addressed the quarterback position, and they went out and got Justin Fields from the Pittsburgh Steelers, who doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on him because Russell Wilson ultimately played the bulk of the snaps last season. And here's a new environment, a new scheme. You love Fields' athleticism. I think the question is, will the efficiency in the passing game follow? That's been the one aspect that has, I don't want to say it's been troublesome, but it's been a bit of a question mark throughout his career. I like the age. I like the athleticism. He has yet to prove, though, can he be that pocket passer that thrives? The Jets are taking a chance on that. If the offensive line protects him, that could be a nice bang for your buck signing from the Jets' perspective.
Would you say that's the one head scratcher, if you will, the most surprising decision?
Well, I mean, I think it's a bit of a surprise because, once again, there's not a proven track record with respect to his production as a passer. But the Jets need a quarterback, so I'm not surprised that they went in that direction. I guess I'm a little bit surprised that Aaron Glenn in year one is saying, okay, I'm not going to go with necessarily the proven veteran. I'm going to go with perhaps the up-and-comer, especially when you say to yourself, okay, you're inheriting a team that has had issues under center, right? The biggest problem for the Jets is there hasn't been stability at that position. They have brought in a few veterans, but it's been a revolving door. So I thought maybe Aaron Glenn would aggressively go after somebody who he's seen and has done it year in and year out. But I think what you also have to understand, Ken, is when you're a first-year head coach, you do have a little bit of leeway and flexibility from the standpoint of you figure they're going to give him at least a season or two. I know you can't take that for granted with respect to life in the NFL, but hard to believe that even if things don't go according to plan this year, that they're going to all of a sudden change their game plan. So he may be saying to himself, okay, hey, let's bring in a younger quarterback who we can work with, who we can still mold. We have time there. And if things can click and we can implement a scheme and a game plan we like in year one, then think about where we can start with the foundation that we'll have in place in year two. So when you take into consideration those factors, not necessarily surprising. I think if there is any surprise, I look at the Seahawks going with Sam Darnold and saying, hey, we're going to duplicate what the Vikings did. Because if you're going to bring in a guy like Sam Darnold, you better make sure your house is in order. Nothing against Sam, but Sam thrived in Minnesota because he had the weaponry, he had an offensive line, and he had a running game. If you're a team and you're on the fence with all those factors, that to me is really rolling the dice. And Seattle, moving on from DK Metcalf, Geno Smith, I just wonder whether or not they could duplicate what Minnesota put forth last season.
I love your analysis. I love your. I just am always blown away because I was never a sports fan growing up, and I just got to tell you as an aside, just to hear you without a fumfer, you're like a walking encyclopedia. To be so informed on every player, every team, and have such brilliant analysis with such logic blows me away every time you're on. I love having you on. National sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer Lance Medow, total pro. We love you. Thank you for joining us this morning. Great to have you on as always.
Well, I appreciate the compliments. The check is in the mail, Ken, until, of course, you owe me more in the next spot coming up here. Just a warning.
Done. You got it. All right, Lance. Have a great day, buddy. Thank you again. We appreciate you.
You as well. Take care, Ken.